तो दोस्तों, मैं सर कमल कुमार। आज मैं आप लोगों को जापानीज ऑक्यूपेशन इन अंडमान एंड निकोबार आइलैंड के बारे में बताना चाहता हूं। अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगे तो आप शेयर, सब्सक्राइब और लाइक करना ना भूलें। तो दोस्तों, जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि 1857 की क्रांति के बाद में ड्रेडेड क्रांतिकारी को यहाँ पर लाकर सेलुलर जेल में रखा जाता था और उसे काला पानी का सजा कहा जाता था। जापानीज ने यहाँ पर 23 मार्च 1942 से लेकर 12 अक्टूबर 1945 तक राज किया। पहले यहाँ पर ब्रिटिशर्स का राज था तथा जापानीज ऑक्यूपेशन से पहले ब्रिटिशर्स ने सारा डॉक्यूमेंट्स डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया। उसके बाद जापानीज ने जब ब्रिटिशर्स को फिर से सरेंडर करने के पहले सारा रिकॉर्ड्स जला दिया, इसलिए यहाँ का रिकॉर्ड्स मोस्टली अवेलेबल नहीं है। एक ही रिकॉर्ड्स जापानीज ऑक्यूपेशन का अवेलेबल है, वह मेरे नाना लेट रामाकृष्ण द्वारा लिखा गया ये बुक द अंडमान आइलैंड अंडर जापानीज ऑक्यूपेशन, इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस लीग विच वॉज फाउंड बाय सुभाष चंद्र बोस उसके चेयरमैन थे। सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने 30 दिसंबर 1943 को यहाँ पर तिरंगा जिमखाना मैदान में फहराया था। इसका यह मतलब है कि हमने आज़ादी 15 अगस्त 1947 के पहले पाया। उस दिन मेरे नाना ने वेलकम स्पीच दिया और 10,000 रुपये नेताजी को भेंट सौंप दिया। उनका जन्म 1896 को हुआ तथा मृत्यु 29 अप्रैल 1970 को हुआ। आइए अब बुक का प्रीफेस के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं जो मेरे द्वारा लिखा गया है। These islands were the home of the primitive tribes before the Britishers made the island into a penal settlement. The transportation of the patriots of our freedom struggle movement to the Indian penal settlement Kalapani since 10th March 1858 and their incarceration in the cells of the cellular jail after its completion in 1906 cannot go unrecorded in the history of our freedom struggle. Not much is known about the role played by Japanese during the occupation in the Andaman Nicobar Islands, and in the absence of old records, it was an uphill task to collect the material. Much of the records had also been destroyed during the war times, and except though few majority of the people have passed away to tell the tale of account for the sufferings and martyrdoms of those who gave the prime of their life for independence of the country, for us, and the prosperity to live and breathe in free India. But that period between 1940 to 45 unfortunately turned out to be the days of fears and tears among the inhabitants of the Andaman Nicobar Islands, who had to undergo untold sufferings and sacrifices for at the hand of the Japanese imperialist force, contrary to the expectation and hopes of the people in these islands. Turned out to be a nightmare when the Japanese imperial force adopted tactics of suppressing the freedom of the people. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's role as the Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Independence League (IIL) has gained so much prominence in the history that people sometimes happen to ignore his other numerous contributions in life to freedom of the country. The book, authored by my maternal grandfather, late Ramakrishna, son of late Lingappa, is the only document that unfolds many events that occurred during the time of the Japanese occupation of the island between 1942 to 1945. That he was born in the Port in the year 1896, and after finishing his middle school education in the year 1910, which was the highest education then available in Andaman Nicobar Islands, he had completed his further education in Rangoon. That during the Second World War, Japan declared war against Britain and United States of America. The British government in Andaman realized that they were in no position to defend the islands, and therefore abandoned the islands during Second World War, leaving behind a bare skeleton administration and the Indian settlers, who were mostly the revolutionaries of the first war of independence. When the Japanese occupied the islands on 23rd March 1942, the people of Andaman were very happy and hoped for the brighter days to come. The Indian branch of Indian Independence League was formed under presidency of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to support freedom struggle movement from these islands. My maternal grandfather was the chairman of the Andaman branch of Indian Independence League under Subhash Chandra Bose. During the Japanese occupation, he was closely associated with the civil administration and was appointed as the deputy commissioner by the Japanese. He was also the editor of the Japanese daily, the Andaman Shimbun, published from Port Village. On the 30th December 1943, it was a proud moment for the members of the Indian Independence League for presenting grand ceremonial guard of honor to Netaji, who hoisted tricolor for the first time at the historical Gymkhana ground at Port Blair. My maternal grandfather delivered a welcome speech to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and also presented rupees 10,000 to him at Gymkhana ground. The members of the league were subjected to untold sufferings and sacrifices and were entangled in foul spy cases by the Japanese imperial forces. He was interned in the September 1944 and was released only after the surrender of the Japanese to the Britishers in August 1945. As the head of the civil administration and the inmate of the cellular jail, he actually saw what was happening in and around, out of the jail with his own eyes. He retired from the government service in 1947 and expired on 29th April 1970. The book, authored by maternal grandfather, brings of chronological events occurred during Japanese occupation during 1942 to 1945 and is the only available authenticated documents of the Japanese occupation. Over the last decade or so, the Andaman Islands have emerged as the major tourist destination in India. It is not surprising that it is the one of the most beautiful places in the country. It is the most significant aspect of the Indian history in which the part of the Indian territory got freedom before the 15th August 1947, and the book will unfold to the readers the untold story of Indian struggle for freedom and will enable them to evaluate the lifelong contribution of Netaji in the service of India, his motherland. I shall be glad if the researchers, youth and historian utilize this book for information on a very vital chapter of Indian freedom. I am immensely thankful to my father, Sri Jagdish Kishan, son of late Ram Kishan, my mother, Srimati Surjana Devi, daughter of late Ramakrishna, my maternal uncle, late Vishwesh Narayan, son of late Ramakrishna, my wife, Srimati Sunita Gupta, and my daughter, Srishti Kumari Gupta, for her help for bringing out his book authored by my maternal grandfather in verbatim and in an attractive manner. The project would not have completed if I had not received guidance, encouragement, and help from Dr. Rashida Agibal, ex-curator, National Memorial Cellular Jail, Port Blair. Last but not the least, I must thank Sri Sandeep Kishan for his support. Self-introduction by the author. I, Sri Ramakrishna, was born in Port Blair in 1896. After finishing my middle school education in 1910, the highest standard then available in the Andaman, I got my further education in Rangoon. After my return from Rangoon, I joined the Chief Commissioner's Secretariat and later worked as Tahsildar. During the Japanese occupation, I was closely associated with the civil administration of the Japanese. I was appointed as a deputy commissioner by the Japanese and was also the editor of Japanese propaganda daily, the Andaman Shimbun, published from Port Blair. Like most others, off and on, I also got despair of the Japanese and was taken to the jail a number of times for interrogation. I was finally interned in September 1944 and released only after the surrender in August 1945. As the head of the civil administration and as an inmate of the cellular jail, I actually saw what was happening in and out of the jail with my own eyes. I was also the chairman of the Andaman branch of Indian Independence League under Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. I retired from government service in 1947 and now lives under retirement. During my lifetime, I have seen 4 changes in the administration of this island. I saw the severe penal administration of the Andaman in the early part of this century. Then came the trying period of the Japanese occupation. This was once more replaced by the British administration, but this time not as a penal colony. Finally, independence in the year 1947 brought about an entirely changed outlook in the administration of the islands, and with it, new hopes and aspirations for the islanders. तो दोस्तों, फर्स्ट चैप्टर है द अंडमान ऑन द ईव ऑफ द जापानीज ऑक्यूपेशन. Before dealing with the actual occupation of these islands by the Imperial Japanese forces, some prominent facts about the behavior of the Japanese some 10 years prior to their occupation needs mentioning here. They were coming often to this island ostensibly to collect shells from the shores of these islands. At first, no attention was paid to them, but when their number increased, they were asked to take out licenses. So when they came out in their boats, they touched Port Blair first, took out necessary licenses from the administration, and went out fishing. Then they returned again, exhibited their ware at the marine dockyard, paid royalty, took a port clearance from the harbour master, and departed to their destiny, invariably Malaya. No one knew of the otherwise innocent vocation until after war, when it was discovered that these fishermen were expert naval personnel from Japan who surveyed every inch of the Andaman Sea and picked up useful local knowledge. So, the Japanese landing forces were fully aware of the coastal condition when they came here. The Andaman was away from the dangers in the World War I, when the center of activity was Europe, Africa, and Western Asia, except for a time when the German raider Emden created a certain amount of terror which had more of a nuisance value to the shipping in the Bay of Bengal than nothing else. There was hardly any sea or land engagement in and around the islands. The islands enjoyed a similar sense of security for some time during the World War II. But when the theater became the Pacific Ocean and the Japanese started sweeping everything before them as far as Malaya, things began taking different shape. The British considered their naval base at Singapore to be impregnable, and the Americans, who had not till then recovered from the stunning blow given at Hawaii by the Japanese, believed their ally. With the fall of the Singapore following the occupation of Philippines, Borneo, Sumatra, Java, East Indies, and Malaya, an assault on Burma seemed inevitable. When this actually materialized and the military success of the enemy in the country were on the increase daily, the authorities in India got disturbed and decided to consolidate the fighting strength of the Andaman. A regiment of Gorkha was brought here with no navy of the Allies either in the Indian Ocean or in the Pacific Ocean to either reinforce them or to replenish provisions. It was a foregone conclusion that the regiment was sent here to dig its own grave at leisure. Reinforcements, reinforcement or retreat was out of the question. The Allies became aware of this hopeless situation towards the closing month of 1941 when they started evacuating people from here in batches. The British started removing the mainlanders. Thus, the subordinate staff with their families, private persons who were here for trade or for other pursuits and their families, the administrative and departmental officers with their families, and finally the Gorkha regiment and the only company of the British soldiers left these islands. Thus, a bare skeleton administration functioned by the end of February 1942, waiting to give charge to the invaders peacefully should they happen to come to take it. Convicts and the indigenous free population were left here either to swim or to sing. Of even this skeleton administration, four senior European officers holding charges of important departments surreptitiously left this place in a small motorboat and reached Chennai the very time. The Japanese forces were advancing towards these islands. The evacuation and the final disappearance of these four officers, namely Mr. Reddy's, the Deputy Commissioner, Mr. McCarthy, Superintendent of Police, Lieutenant Commander Waters, the Engineer and Harbour Master, and Mr. N.H. Young, jailer, created a vacuum in the administration and gave a clue to the public here of the impending calamity. The general run of the men after the full fall of the Singapore was considering the mighty British Empire like the mighty Roman Empire to be in the throes of death. History repeated itself after the departure of those four officers about 4 days before the arrival of the Japanese lawlessness began. Of the four officers who left, the superintendent of police, like others, had come here on deputation, as he created a certain amount of commotion here during the Japanese occupation. His antecedent must be mentioned here. During his tenure, he spent most of the time in thoroughly combing the uninhabited country under the pretext of raiding the hostile Jarwa tribes who were occasionally attacking people here. He had therefore studied the jungles of the Andaman thoroughly. During the war, he became useful to the Allies as their spy. He came in submarines, contacted laborers in the jungle, and sent information of military importance by wireless. The Japanese instruments caught these messages and suspected every man on the street to be spy of the Allies. The Japanese treated the local innocent residents as such, and the account of the sufferings on this account will be given later in details. They did not at all suspect that some other person was doing the spying work, hiding himself in the thick growth of the jungle. This revelation came after the war. Towards the beginning of 1942, when the executive staff was conspicuous by its absence, the military police, 400 strong, was posted at various strategic points to prevent indiscipline and lawlessness. Europeans, as much as there were left here, barely half a dozen of them had lost their grip over the population. The villagers remained peaceful, but convicts broke away from their barracks and did not attend to their routine work. As there was no one to extract work from them, they did what they liked. They indulged in daylight robberies and in laying waste to the other people's property. This state of affair, however, did not last long. The Japanese came in a day or two. तो दोस्तों, मेरे नाना द्वारा देखा गया ये फर्स्ट टॉपिक यहाँ फिनिश हुआ. अगर आपको ये वीडियो इंटरेस्टिंग लगे तो सब्सक्राइब करें एंड डू फॉलो मी फॉर द नेक्स्ट चैप्टर. थैंक यू.